All right, everybody, welcome to another Ask a Dev Unreal Engine dev stream. That's actually not what's going on. This isn't so much the old way. This is the new way. So we're doing a dev stream. These are meant for to show kind of the nitty gritty of the day-to-day of this. I try to package up what I'm working on currently as part of our journey to our 1-year game release, which is looking scarier and scarier every day, but I try to package up little bits of that into 1-hour segments that we can digest. Last time we started talking about creating a swipe for our melee attacks. Today we're going to continue that. This one's going to be actually a little more packaged like a tutorial. I definitely kind of got a little bit hung up with some of the material work and everything we were doing last time, so we're going to try to make that a little more succinct today. As always, huge shout out to our Patreon members, everybody in the community, everybody who's helping out with the channel. This is a fun adventure, and I appreciate everybody's support and feedback and, gotchas that are coming, everything that's going on. If I forgot to mention it, my name's Kevin, and we are stumbling through this together. So with that, let's get going. We're going to do this, we're going to do this a little bit different than we've done recently. We're going to kind of do this more the old school way, where I am actually going to create a whole new blank Unreal. And we're going to do this from scratch so that we can kind of get it together. Now we are going to fast track a couple of things. Okay, so Unreal Engine 5.5. This is basically a blank project because we don't need anything else. In my content folder, I am going to create a new folder. We're going to call this VFX. And inside of our VFX, I'm going to create a new folder called ShapeLib. And I'm also going to create a texture folder, which I'm going to name a little bit better. Texture folder. Windows doesn't understand changing the cases. And then finally we need, let's call this, emitters, and let's make one for systems. Sure, let's go like this. We'll be organized. All right, so a couple things. For our ShapeLib, we're just going to import the shapes that we built in our last session. There's no point in redoing that. They are very basic. They are basically a couple different shapes and a couple new ones that I've got. So let's just go ahead and import these here. Okay. So we have, looks like we have 2 swooshes. I didn't realize that. We're going to take our latest ones. Let's re-import all. We're going to just import all 3 of these, and I'll show you what they are. These are all, let's just see what we get. Do they come in correctly? I've noticed with some of the new import stuff, not everything is always correct. But the big, most important thing is when we look at these, we dock this over here, we have a disk. And as we did before, the disk is 0 to 1, inward edge to outward edge and around the circle. We also have our, this one's new. You did not see this one last time. And then also we have our swoosh edge. So now, kind of a lot of this comes down to a combination of creative problem solving and a whole lot of texture work. So most of what we're going to be doing today is material and texture work. So let's go ahead and we can double check the names of these. That looks pretty good. Let's just go ahead and save all these because we definitely have crash issues on this machine. And let's go ahead and make sure, let's check our audio levels. I think we're pretty good. Okay, so now that we have those, we need a couple textures, because when we look at this, what we want to do is we want to have a couple options. We're going to start with the disk because we're going to fall back to something that is a little more simplified today. I do want to double check our stream real quick because it's late, nobody's here, to make sure that the audio is actually working. Okay, I think we're good to go. All right, so if we bring up Yeah, let's bring up a Photoshop. Let's just make some real quick, just so that we can see it start to finish. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, and we're going to go 512 by 512, create that. That was my Discord, not yours, if you heard that. Now let's go ahead and create a background. We're going to fill it with black. Okay, and then we need, this is going to be our first swoosh. No, this is our slash, not our swoosh, our slash. So I'm going to take a paintbrush. We'll shrink it up a little bit. And I'm just going to go like, I need something other than black though. I need white. So let's just go white like this. Okay. And Erode is hopping in. Before you speak, before you say anything, the usual caveats. State of California, this is being recorded. It's probably going to get posted. Just so you know. Welcome to...
Oh, I'm out of here then.
Welcome to the stream. Okay, so we're going to create the swoosh. Or not swoosh. I keep saying swoosh. I mean slash. Okay, this is our slash. Now, there's a couple key parts to this that I want to show you all as we do this. Now I'm gonna take some time to use the smear brush to kind of smear this a little bit, just to kind of give it a little more shape and some variance, and kind of like bring it down to a tip. And then I'm going to take some black and I'm just going to drop it in here. Let's go just for variation. Let's go here. No, actually that might be okay. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, and let's go back to our smear. And we could just use blurs. We could use all kinds of stuff. There's lots of different ways to do this. If we don't like it, it doesn't matter. We can come back and change it afterwards. We can edit it, all that stuff. I'm trying to get some variation. Okay. And there's some key points to this that I'll show you as far as the edge. So let's just call this our slash. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this to, let's put this in our documents. OneDrive. Oh, I really just love the way Windows does this. Okay, this was called VFX, wasn't it? VFX /VFX. All right, let's make a new folder. I'm going to call this art, and we're not art plus, just art. And we're going to save this in here as our, this is going to be our slash. You got it right. Slash texture. Okay, and then I'm going to export this because I don't like, well, maybe it's gotten better, but from a legacy standpoint, using PSD files, sometimes they just didn't come in properly to Unreal Engine because they hadn't updated the reader, the interpreter, the way they had with some of the others. So we'll just go ahead and go ping 8, that's fine. And we'll save this. And this is going to go in the same folder we were just in, which unfortunately we're going to have to explore again to home. Of course. Okay, Freeman. No. Desktop. Default. Here we go. Users. Okay, Kevin. This is going to be in Documents, Unreal Projects /VFX. Let's go. Art, and we're going to create an export folder here. Export. That way I can pack this up for everybody if they want it. And let's just save this here. Okay, cool. Once again, we're trying to fast track this. So back to Unreal Engine. In our texture folder, let's just get this set up so we can start building our material. So let's import to this folder the actual values that we're doing here. Once again, I have to are you kidding me? That's no fun. Okay, Unreal Projects / VFX art export. This is the one we want. All right, finally. And let's save that. Okay, so now we have our disk, which is here, and we have our texture. And so we can start to see what this looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an emitter, but we don't have our material yet. So that's okay though, but we're going to create our Niagara VFX effects emitter. And let's just go ahead and do a blank emitter. All right, we can use fountain. We'll create that. This is going to be a Niagara emitter, and this is going to be the slash. I said slash, right? Yeah, slash. Okay, cool. Let's open this up. Now, we're going to change a few things in here. One, I like gray. Okay, we don't need the spawn rate. We don't need drag, gravity force, particle state we can keep. We don't need to solve for forces. We don't need to add velocity. We don't need shape locations. It's not going to be a sprite render. It's going to be a mesh renderer. And the mesh we want to spawn is our disk. So disk. Let's see if we've got that. Oh look, there's a static mesh radial disk that's part of the engine. If only we had known. Okay. And then for our spawn, we do need to add back in a spawn burst instantaneous. And we're going to do 1 spawn times 0. So here is our disk. Okay. There's one big change I need to make to my editor preferences before I go crazy though. I need my middle mouse to be flipped. Okay, so we have our disk, but we don't have a material for it yet. So let's compile, apply, and save. Now we got to take the texture that we've got and we just want to put it on this disk. So let's do that. We're going to go to textures. Let's create a new material here. This material, we'll just keep it simple. This is going to be material underbar v slash. Let's start with slash. We may make separate ones for each one, but you may want to call this like VFX core base or whatever you want. But once again, let's just get this to set up. This is going to be a surface. We're going to make this translucent because we want to be able to see through it. Oh wow, it's freaking out. That's kind of crazy. Default lit. We do want it two-sided. And apply. Ooh, that's wild. And save. Okay. And then we're going to, that was my Discord, just so you all know. Let's see here. Non-directional. Okay, cool. Now, let's bring in our texture parameter. Texture sample parameter 2D. This is going to be our, what do we want to call this? Let's just call this our, it's not our mask. Let's call it shape texture, for example, because we are going to use different shapes, and then this is going to be our slash that we made, this guy. And if we just feed this into our base color and our emissive color, and we stick this on a flat object, it looks like there's a bloom turned on in this. Where's our preview scene? I don't know where it is, but we're not going to worry about it. Compile, save. We'll apply and save this. Okay, so we have an M slash. Now, if we put this on our disk, what we can do here is we can go down in our, we're almost there, y'all. We can go down in here. We can enable material overrides. Let me make sure my head is not in the way of this real quick. It is not. So here's our material overrides. And we're going to add an override material to it. And the material that we're going to add is the one that we just made, which is our slash. Okay, we're there. Now, you're looking at that going, that looks awesome. So there's a couple things about this as far as like at this point, what do we do? And for the most part, for the slash, a lot of this is now the material work. So let's take a look at a couple of things. We have this in here. If all we did was we took our m/material, if we save this and we connect our R channel into opacity, you'll see that it cuts it out, right? And now when we look at our disk after we apply it, you'll see that it's cut out. Okay? So one thing we could do is we could update our particle mesh rotation. Let's see here. There's going to be two ways that we can make this look like it's spinning. One is to do rotation, and one is to pan the texture around U and V, and that's what we talked about last time. So I'm just going to put a mesh rotation in here. Mesh rotation. Is this the one I want? Update mesh orientation. Maybe that's the one I want. Okay, that's the wrong axis. We're going to go 1 and 0. Is that? There we go. Okay, so if we change our rotation rate to 10, okay, we have a slash, right? Now, we actually want this to be slightly different, and we're going to change this a bit, because our slash, effectively what we want is we want this to be a 1. Let's see here, parameters. We don't need this to be this big. If we go to our timeline, let's change our timeline to be, let's see here, endpoint. We don't need to go to 10 seconds, let's go to 5. Okay, and then let's change the lifetime of our particle. Initialize particle. This lifetime is a lot. Let's go 0.5 to 1. 1. Okay, and then our rotation, we don't need any of this sprite rotation stuff. We can get rid of all this. We can go like so. Okay, now, in order to make this like customizable, this is where we start getting into the material work. So, first things first, let's start with the basics. How do we get the color to be the color that we want based on our particle color? Well, in our material, what we do is this is going to be our mask for all of our colors and stuff like that. All right. But what we can do is we can get in the material, we can get the VFX or parameter, dynamic particle. No, that's not what I want. Darn it, I clicked the wrong one. Particle color. Okay, so if I take the particle color and I just simply multiply it by the RGB value that we have here, okay, and we feed that into our emissive color, and we take our RGB color and just feed it into base just in case, what's going to happen is this thing is going to emit whatever the particle color is set to with the opacity that we've created. So if we go ahead and click save, apply, etc., when we come back to our slash and we initialize our particle, and rather than white, let's go red, you'll notice it's already changing colors. Okay, so now our slash is the color of the particle that we determine the particle. The cool thing about this is we don't have to update it every time. So if we need green slashes or red AOEs or blue AOEs for magic or whatever it is, we can all update it just in the particle. Okay, we're going to just break this down bit by bit. Now, to get it to look cool, glow like hell, we're going to go with 100 or 1,000. The higher you go, the crazier this gets. Okay, so you can overload these colors. Now, we have a little bit of an issue here where the shape on our disk doesn't look quite right. Okay, so what's happening is there's a couple of things that we want to be able to sculpt the shape of this thing. And in order to do that, inside of our slash, we need to give ourselves a couple of options here. So one thing that could be happening is imagine that this is a square. It goes left to right, 0 to 1, bottom to top, 0 to 1. That's U and V. It's possible, the way our disk is oriented, those are flipped. So this thing is inverted on the disk. Oops, wrong thing. It's inverted on this disk. So what we've got here is we've got the wide end at the center and the shallow end at the edge, and the shallow end is being stretched because our UVs are being stretched to wrap all the way around this disk. All right, so what we can do is we can flip that. If we get our texture coordinates, right clicking texture coordinate, not sample, coordinate. Okay, and let's take this and go, let's mask it. Okay, so here's what we're doing with this mask, and this thing is kind of crazy. Everything in material world is labeled not what it is, okay? So we're taking the texture coordinates and we're masking RNG, but that's not really what's happening. This is RGB, it's not really RGB. You got to think about this as masking the first and second channel. In this particular case, the first channel is U, the second channel is V. So R is U and G is V. Just know that it's about what's in the first channel, second channel, etc., not necessarily the label. So I'm going to duplicate this, and what we're going to do is we're going to choose G, for example, and we're going to try to flip this. All right, to flip this, I'm going to go 1 minus. So 1 minus, if you haven't gone through our tutorial on materials that's on the Ask a Dev website, this may feel fast, okay? But the point is, what a 1 minus does is, whatever, here actually I can show you. Start previewing node. I've got to figure out how to turn off this bloom, because we are not going to be able to show you this stuff properly with this bloom stuff turned on. And I'm not used to seeing it in here. Apply and save. Window, where's our preview scene settings? Preview scene settings, lighting, use skylight, directional, environment. We can knock this, there we go. And 0, directional light color, show the grid, post-processing, we don't want this. Where is it? Film grain, global illumination, lens, bloom. No, we don't have any bloom. Exposure, is auto exposure on? Okay, well, at least this is readable now, okay? The point is, if you look at the texture coordinate, 0 is black, 1 is white. That's why from left to right, this is 0 to 1. If we preview the mask for V, okay, what we're going to get is we're going to get bottom to top, okay? Or top to bottom, apparently. So 0 is at the top, 1's at the bottom. Okay, so going back to our 1 minus, if we start previewing this node, notice right now we go black is left, white is right. If we flip this, what is 1 minus 1? 0. What is 1 minus 0? 1. This is going to flip it. So if we start previewing here, you'll see that black's on the right, white's on the left. Okay, so we have the ability to flip this. Now we know that what we want to actually flip is the G in this case, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to take that, we're not going to flip the R, we're going to actually append these two back together so that we can recombine these to remake the U's and V's and plug this in. Okay, now look what happened. Our material flipped, our texture flipped. What we did is we flipped the UV coordinates of what is being used for the shape texture, which causes this whole thing to flip. If we apply and save this, and we go back and we look at our slash, look at what's happening now. Okay, now the outer edge is kind of like that zigzag that we had, right? So we've basically flipped this on its head, which is what we wanted to do. Now, at this point, this is the game we're going to play. We're going to be using material tricks to be able to edit and change this to do what we want. So there's a couple things here. One, we may not want to flip this. So let's add in a switch parameter, static switch parameter called flip, and this is going to be V. All right, and if that is true, we're going to do 1 minus. Okay, and if it's false, we're going to keep it the same, and we're going to feed that back in. Now, since we're here, let's go ahead and do the same. Now, by the way, this is kind of like how core materials come about. Okay, as you start using things, you find meaningful ways to reuse materials that don't slow them down, so that you don't have tons and tons of materials running around in your engine. All right, hold on 1 second. I am talking a mile a minute. I'm already starting to lose my voice. We need to do the same thing up here. Okay, so we're going to go like this, and we're going to rename this one to be flip U. Okay, now I'm going to make another change here. What I'm going to do is I am going to apply and save this. We have everything saved. I'm going to go back here. Why did that look saved? I'm going to create a material instance. Create a material instance. It's going to be material instance slash A. I don't know. We'll just go with A for right now. Okay. What I want to show you is if we look at this on a square like this. Okay, now we can see what's going on, and we have all of our stuff. So in here, we have these global switch parameters. I want to flip the V. I can check that box now and click this, and it'll just flip. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll update this guy to use our new material instance. All right, and the V. Oh, we were updating it to use the material instance instead, which should be pretty close by. Slash. Okay. Cannot set material as a parent as it's already. Oh, can't. Okay, that's not. I'm in the wrong place. I need to be doing this here. This is the slash. Slash. Okay, cool. Oh, compile, apply, and save. Now, we have a couple problems. So let's go back and fix a couple things. You see how this center ring is highlighted super hot right now? That's because our texture's messed up. If you look at our material slash, you can kind of see this white edge at the bottom. That's an export problem. So either we have white at the bottom here that we don't know about, or delete layer, yes. Or when we exported, we just didn't do a very good job with colors. But I have seen this where, undo. I have seen this where sometimes the export doesn't play nice. So let's export, save for web legacy. Rather than going ping 8, let's go 24. We're not going to worry about transparency because we don't have any. We'll keep all that, save that, and let's overwrite this and save this. And replace it. And let's see if that gets rid of the bottom edge that we had going on. If we go to that texture and we re-import this, save, does that help at all? No, it's still there. We have some kind of white edge. It's probably has something to do with the pre-molt. Now, why would it go somewhere else? Oh, it doesn't even give me options here. That's interesting. Let's see if that's any better. Re-import. I did not have this problem the last time I used this. Okay. It's going to be okay though, because we do have a way to save this. File. Save as. Ping 24. Preview. 512. Quality. Somewhere in here. Matte. Here we go. None. No matte. Let's try that. Save. Save. Replace. And texture. Re-import. I'm hoping that's successful, but I don't see anything in the message log. And let's try one more thing. Let's go RGB, distance, alpha, HDR, grayscale. One of these settings. Single float. Alpha, sRGB. Oh, what is this? Wait, am I in the wrong project? Oh no, I'm not in the wrong project. It just didn't like it when I changed that. Let's see, mask, grayscale. Where's sRGB? Default. Refresh nodes. It doesn't like that now. Re-import. Okay, maybe that fixed it. Slash texture. Okay, we still have our white border. That's okay. It's okay. There is something that's going on with our texture here. Where we've got some kind of pre-molt or alpha mask or something that's happening. Let's try one more thing, because one of the things that we are going to do is we're going to fix the edges anyways, so we may just end up doing this. So matte, let's go black. Embed, color flood. Let's try this. Save. Save. Replace. You know what? And I want to see that this is actually changing. So let's just change this front edge. Okay. File, export. That's the edit menu. Save for web. PNG, matte is black. Save. Let's do this again. Save. Replace. Okay, cool. Back to this. Let's go in here. I want to see this fill in up here just to make sure. Okay, it is updating. Save. It is not getting rid of that white line. We will troubleshoot that later. We've got some kind of pre-molt or something going on, etc. And we'll dig into that in a minute. Let's not get lost here. Okay, but so right now we have our shape. It is playing on our slash here. Okay, but the thing that we want to do, there's a couple things. Depending on what we are working with, let's say that we did want to get rid of this ring at the bottom. How might we do that? Well, what we can do is we can use the knowledge that we have, and we can do simple things like, let's say that we wanted let's say that this was a cube, okay, and we didn't want to see this edge. We wanted a nice fade in the edge because this is a material effect. For a VFX, for example, we can fade out this top edge. There are several different things that we can use to fade out the top edge. So let me show you a little bit about what I'm talking about here. If we take our RGB color and we simply multiply it. Now, what can we multiply this by? Let's get a gradient. Let's start with a gradient. This is one that everybody will probably make sense to people. Linear gradient. Okay, if we multiply these two together and we start previewing this, you'll notice that there's a slight fade now to it, right at the top. And this is because this material is being multiplied by this gradient. And if we look at this, start previewing, you can see this is left to right. If we go top to bottom instead, now it's kind of light at the top, or faded at the top and not at the bottom, okay? But if we flip this, we can also flip this as well, 1 minus, and that will flip it so that it's actually lighter at the bottom. And you'll notice that our white line at the bottom disappears. Okay, so what we can do is we could take this linear gradient, we could flip it and create a square. And what I mean by that is if we take this linear gradient and we take it and we multiply it by the 1 minus of it, let's see what we get. Do you see how it's slightly dark at the top and the bottom? And then if we do the same thing with this 1 minus and we multiply that by that and we start previewing this, you'll notice it's left to right. So if we take those two and we multiply them together, okay, and we look at the result, what we'll get is we'll get a faded edge all the way around the square. Okay, it's faded all the way. Okay, so what we could do is we can use this kind of idea and we can amp this up. So let's multiply this by a number, let's say 10. And look at that. Okay, so now it's going all the way to the edges. Okay, if we take that and we saturate it, what this is going to do is, what happens is if we multiply by, let's say we multiply by 100. Okay, the value in the middle, in the very middle of this square, okay, is, let's say 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1, times 1 times 100. So the value of the white in the middle of this square is 100 right now, roughly speaking. We don't want 100, we want 1. We want this thing to go 0 to 1 because we're going to be using it as a mask. So what we can do is you can saturate it or you can clamp it. Now, clamping it also will get it go 0 to 1. Saturate is from everything I've read, everything I've been told by all the material experts in the world, saturate is a cheaper version of doing a clamp. Okay, so if we take this and we now multiply this by our slash material, you'll notice that if we start previewing this, we have our slash, but it's faded all around the edges. Okay, and then we can take this and rather than feeding in all of that, this will be what we feed into all of our stuff. And now we have a edge controlled opacity. So this is one way to do it. I don't like this way. I don't like this way because I want control of a hard edge. Okay, it's not bad, but it also uses this linear gradient function, which I forget how many instructions it is, but look, if you're rolling with me on this, honestly, I'm not even worried about material instructions right now. Let's just get the visuals that we want, but it's something to factor in. Okay, so linear gradient's 1. What's another way to do this? What else has a value that goes 0 to 1? Well, a good one is our texture coordinates, believe it or not. So if we take our texture coordinates, look at this. If we start previewing this, it's going to give us these crazy pretty colors. We've got oranges, we've got reds, and we've got yellows. If we mask this, like we did before, and we just take the R, which remember is U, and we take a look at this, and we start previewing this. Oh, look at that. We have a gradient without using a gradient function. We don't need it. So we can literally, this is our U gradient. We could feed this in to here instead and get the exact same, almost, they may even be the exact same result. So if we mask this again, okay, and then this time we use our G value, now what we're going to get is, or this is actually V, remember? So now we have the exact same thing, roughly speaking. We can stop previewing this. Okay, and we have our edge faded. We have our edge fading. So all of this is literally about being able to control the edging. So that what happens is if we put this, let me show you another example. If we go to our slash, right now we have this on a disk. What if we put this on our swoosh? Okay, do you see how we have a hard edge at the top and bottom of our swoosh? Well, if we adjusted our edge fade, we could pull this off. Like we could control whether or not that's a hard edge or not. And when you're doing something that's this hot orange like this, it's not as big a deal. But if this was smoke and it was gray, like if we go back to our colors, our particle color, and we reset this to 1, what we've got is, if we wanted this to be a little smoky at the edge, this is a hard edge. It's not going to feel like smoke. It's going to feel like there's a polygon there or something. So maybe we want to fade the edges. So if we come back and we bring this back in, we can basically fade all those edges. That's fine. Cool. Now, what if we want to control how much? All right, so remember, this is our V values. Okay, and if we preview this, start previewing node, what we can do is I can make this a harder edge. So if I multiply this by, let's say, 10, for example, look at the difference when I preview this. See how much harsher this edge is at the top? It's getting a lot tighter. Now what we can do is we can also do the flip side. If I subtract a value, let's say 0.25, look at the difference. Let's go 0.5. Let's go extreme so you can see it. Start previewing. So this is our nice smooth. If we start previewing this one, notice it's cut halfway. Okay? So using just simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc., we can control how strong this edge fade is. All this is all about edge fading. Okay? This is like just our edging. It goes all the way around in UV space. Okay, now let's use something maybe a little bit more, we're going to use the exact same idea, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to use this logic and idea so that we can change how basically how much of this texture we see. So if we take this texture, okay, and we subtract, not subtract, hold on, I want, let's get our V's. So let's take this value V. I'm going to take this because I know this is mapped to V. Okay, if I take this and I multiply it, if I just simply multiply this by let's see, our RGB. Okay, this is what our texture looks like normally. Start previewing. Bright white. If we multiply it, notice how it's fading the top. Okay, now what I can do is I can control where that top fade happens. So if we do something crazy, like let's subtract off, and not anything, let's use the power. Okay, so this is an exponential function. Okay, if I take this and I go to the power of 1, there's no change in our gradient. But look what happens when I go to the power of 2. See how much more gradient we have? 4, 10, 10. See how we're fading our gradient? So what we can do is if we feed this power function into this multiply, now what's going to happen when we start previewing this is you'll see we only have the bottom. All right, so if we want to flip this around to be able to control the depth, if you will, the deepness on that disk, what we can do is we can subtract this. If we go 1 minus, we're just going to flip this. So that's what's happening is this is controlling the fade top to bottom. So you can see here if we go 20, we're getting more towards the top. And we're just fading off the tail. What's cool about that is if we do that and we connect that in instead and we apply that, what's going to happen is when we look at our slash effects. Oh, let's get our disk back. Nope, that wasn't the disk. This is the disk. And compile and apply. And we have flipped the V. Oh, we didn't flip our, okay, we need to flip this the other way, I think. Because we flipped our V, we need to tie this in. Hold on, I want to see what this is. Start previewing node. Yeah, we want to use the result of this. Let's try this instead. Apply. It's the same thing. We're getting our texture coordinate and we're masking it, but we're changing which way it goes based on whether or not that's enabled or not. So when we look at this, we should theoretically see our stuff. So we gotta go 1 minus. Once we get this correct, we'll figure out which way this is. Apply. There it is. So there's our edge. Okay, so when we flip it, we actually need this to be the opposite. So if we go back to our material and we don't flip it, you'll notice that the fade still works because we're taking that into account. Okay, but we want to be able to control this fade. So let's go back and let's take this exponential number and convert this to a parameter. So we're going to promote this to a parameter. This is going to be you're going to have to decide on your naming convention. You could call it bottom fade, you could call it top fade, you could call it U, but this is going to be V. Let's go bottom fade, Bottom-Erode. Okay. Now, this Bottom-Erode is going to have a default value of 1. And when we do that, we can apply it and save it. Okay, and then we can save this as well. And now, Bottom-Erode. Where's my Bottom-Erode? Oh, here it is, Bottom-Erode. So now we can control this, right? So now if I want the slash to be super thin, all I do is change this material parameter. And now look at our slash. See how it's just the outer edge? That's because, and let's bring back our nice hot red. Let's go back to 1000. Kick it up a notch, as Emerald says. Okay, so now we have this nice bright outer edge. Okay, so with this, we can actually start to sculpt and shape how this material looks. So I'm gonna tear this off a little bit so that we can see the updates happening live. And when I change this, you'll notice that it grows and shrinks. Now we have it flipped currently. So we would want this to probably go the other way, for example. Which is interesting. do think we have this working backwards. Let's try this. Wait, did we not flip our U's? Oh, we don't have flip V checked. That's why. Okay, we had it. I think we had it right. Yeah, we had it right. We just had unchecked flip V. That's why it was backwards. So let's bring this back. Okay, apply and save. Okay, so now back to our slash. Okay, so our slash goes all the way to the edge. And what we can do is we can erode the bottom edge. So depending on how much we erode, we go to the top. Now, the problem is, as we erode too much, you can see we start to lose our front edge, right? Because the gradient isn't sharp enough. So what we can do is inside of here, what we can do is we can control how much that happens by changing, by using a little bit of logic to update our hardness. So if we're looking at this, if we start previewing this, you'll see that we have a bottom edge here. If we subtract off, let's say, let's just subtract a number. Let's say 0.25. 0.25. Okay, and then multiply by 100. We could technically do 4, but I'm just going to do 100, and then saturate this. What this is doing is, let's take a look at each step. You can see right now we have a very soft edge down here. If I go to the subtract and I start previewing that, you'll notice that the edge moved up. Okay, but then if we multiply by 100, if we start previewing, you'll notice that the edge sharpens. Okay, except for this weird bloom thing that's happening, the edge sharpens. We have a much sharper edge here. Okay, and then if we saturate it, it's going to bring that back to just 0 to 1, which is fine. In this case, it's almost solid 1. And then we have this power function that erodes it away. Now, where we decide to do this edge hardening, and if we take a look at our slash instance. Oh wait, I didn't apply it. I gotta apply it. Okay, when we take a look at our slash instance, you'll notice that as we... Oh geez, we can't even get it. Our edge is so tight there. That's basically in the wrong place. So let's move this logic. Let's move this logic to happen after our power function. So we're going to bring this into our power function. We're going to bring this into a subtract, and we're going to saturate out into this. Okay. And let's just promote this to a variable. I'm going to promote this to bottom hardness. Okay. All right, and we're going to start with a value of 0. That's fine. Apply and save. Now let's see how we did. So looking at this, when we look at our material slash, if we start to fade it out, what we can do is we can also theoretically affect the hardness. So you see how much crisper that edge becomes depending on what we do here? So it's a much sharper edge. And that's affecting our slash, which I'm going to peel this off so we can see it. Let's come back to our slash and bring back our... Interesting. Are we above? Did we miss a saturate multiplying by all of this stuff? Let's just change that to 1 and apply that. I want to see it. All right, it could be our edge softening stuff is messing stuff up. That is not what I'm expecting at all. But it's about the way demos go. There it is. Okay. So 0.01. Oh wait, that's a negative number. Hold on. 0.1. There we go. See how it's slowly eating away at that? We have a nice sharp edge there. Okay? So by changing that, we can change how far that goes in and out. And I can reset it back to 1, for example. And then we can reset this back, and then we get the full distance. I can also just erode the bottom for a smoother. I don't have to use the hardness at all. And I can have a nicer kind of edge fade to it, if you will. And we go from there. All right, so now we can control our values, basically the values as we go top to bottom. And realistically, what this is with this information, what you can do is you can control how much you fade the top, the bottom, the side, the left and right, just by multiplying by a gradient that you've eroded or not eroded, and go from there. Okay, but what's another thing that we need to do? So there's two ways to kind of like bring this home. Now that we have our material, and I'm going to show you the final material that I did. Now that we have the material, what we can do is, wait, where is it? Where is it? This is our final. Let me move this over here for right now, though. We're not ready for this yet. I want to double check one thing in my notes. We are going to put on here. Okay, cool. So let's see here. In our slash, if we just bring back our rotation rate, and we set it to 2, okay, and then we can change our emitter loop duration to be 2. That's fine. We're going to do, we've got our burst instantaneous, our initializing of the particle. What we are going to do on our initializing of the particle is let's go lifetime of direct set 0.4. Okay, and then rotation, we can keep that as random, and then scale mode non-uniform. This will be used later if we want to. And then we need our initial mesh orientation. So let's add mesh orientation. Okay, and we are going to specify this with a vector. It's not going to be random. I'm going to orient it to a vector. The vector I'm going to use is -1 vertically, and with a rotation of 110, we can leave this all at 0. That's fine. I actually don't think this is doing anything in this case, but that's okay. We'll keep it in there. And then the other thing that I want to update is something else I want to update. Rotation vector. 1. There we go. We had our rotation vector as 4. I'm not sure why it was 4, but as a result of being 4, we were getting a much faster rotation, which is basically, I think it was multiplying it 4 times the speed. Yeah, 2 times the speed, 3 times the speed, 1 times the speed. That's why it's using the full vector. For some reason, I would have thought that's normalized, but it's not. So we're going 1 with a rotation rate of 2. Okay, so now we have our slash, and you're looking at that going, but you know, is that really kind of like how we want our slash? Well, remember, we can control this. And the other thing that we can do is we can actually create other textures. So if we come in here and we change this, and what we do is we simply drop in, not that color, a hard edge black. All right, let's export this. I'm gonna save for web legacy, and we'll go da 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 da. Sure, why not? Let's try that this time. Save this. This is going to be slash hard right. Let's call this hard right texture. Save this. Okay, and then let's go back to Unreal, and inside of our textures folder, let's import our hard right. Save that. Let's save all just in case. And then let's just update our material instance, which is here. Okay, and we're going to change our material instance to use slash hard right. So just by doing that, okay, what's happening now when we look at our slash, you'll notice that it's got a hard, the edge is on the opposite side. There are two ways we can fix this. We can flip our texture, or we can flip our material by using our flip U. I think that flipped it, didn't it? Yeah, that flips it. Okay, so if we flip our material, now when we go back to our slash, now we have the hard right on the right edge. And if we slow this down, you can kind of see it. So now we have that hard right on the right edge. Okay, and if we take our slash and we not erode any of the bottom edge, and we save that, when we look in at our material, you can see it goes all the way down to the base. Okay, so the other way that we could have fixed that is we could have flipped the way the disk was rotating, for example, but we're not going to do that. Give me 1 second, because it's really all about the materials. So the last bit that we want to do is let's discuss, because we're already at an hour. Let's discuss the other method of managing the material. So we just turned off our mesh rotation. Our material is showing up here as is. We're going to switch back. Let's switch back to our other slash. Okay, let's save that. And what I want to do is we're going to add something to our material. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the ability to slide this material around the edge of the ring. So to do that, let's go ahead and I'll show you what I'm talking about in the display. And what we've got is, I mute that for the recording, just so you know I'm not crazy Naruto, if you're not asleep already. Okay. Okay, so what we've got is we want to pan it around the UV. So let's just create a material parameter here. I pressed 1 and left click to get this to show up. I'm going to right click. I'm going to convert this to a parameter, and we're going to call this pan override. Pan override. I'm going to take this, okay, and for the U direction, I'm going to add this. We're going to add this to our U direction and plug it in. Okay, now let's take this disk. Now, this is the other thing that I think is easier to test. If we go back to our slash and we click on the slash, we can load the slash in here in our preview. Now, I think it's kind of hard to use it here, so I like using it in the material instance where you can kind of see what's happening. And we have our pan override once we apply this and save it. Come back here. Okay, we have our pan override here. When we change this value, you'll see how it slides around the edge. Right? So the other way we can drive the The other way that we can drive how it feels like a slash is moving around is we can actually literally slide the frame of reference, the texture frame of reference, which is the UV map. Okay, the UV map is what tells the texture that the top left corner is white and the bottom right corner is red, for example. And it does that by saying 0U, 1Y is white, 1U, and 0Y is red, right? What we can do is we can actually slide those U's and V's underneath. And that's what this add does. So we're basically, you can think of it as we're just sliding the texture mapping underneath the colors. That's what we're doing by sliding these texture coordinates around by adding to it. So in order to get control of this in our particle system, what we can do is we can create a new dynamic parameter. Okay? And then what we do is in here we name our parameters, and we can call this, let's say rotation. You can call it U rotation, for example. You could call it pan. Since we call this pan override, you could call this pan, for example. If we take that and we take this value, and then I'm going to keep the override here simply because I like to be able to test with it sometimes. I'm going to feed that in, and we're going to add that as an and. Okay. Apply. Save. Okay. Now, let's, we can get rid of our pan override here, make sure it's zeroed out. We don't need it. We can save this. Now, let's go back to our Niagara emitter slash. Okay. What we can do is we can go ahead and go right in here and we can add in a particle update and we can type in dynamic. And you'll notice dynamic material parameters is one of our options. And the cool thing is it recognizes based on the material that it's assigned what those values are. So you can see here I have a 0. And if I change this, look at this, it moves around as it changes. This is now inside the Niagara emitter. So as a result of that, I can now control this. So if all we do is do a drop down and I do a float from curve, look at that. That's it. Cool. Now we can go the other way too. If we go 0 to 1. Did that change directions? I don't know if it did. Hold on. Let's see here. 0. 1. Yeah, wait, hold on. That's going clockwise. Yeah. It's like midnight. I'm super like smoked right now. It's like, okay, so it totally changed directions. But the point here now is we can actually control this from within the particle. So depending on the effect that you are trying to achieve, there's multiple ways to do this. Now, I think a really good question would be, which is better? I don't know that one is necessarily better. I think it's literally dependent on kind of like the use case. So let's take an example of this. Let's take our mesh renderer and let's switch this to be our swoosh edge. And what I want to show you, this probably isn't a good example. Let's get rid of our dynamic material parameter. And let's take our /A and flip the U's maybe. Sometimes what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the edge where you can see the seam. In some cases you can see the seam where the texture gets to the edge of the UV space and it comes back around. And as a result of that, you'll start to see a hard edge where you don't want to see one if your textures aren't created to be mirrors, for example. And as a result of that, in those cases, if I don't want to see that hard edge, I would rotate the actual mesh. But if there isn't a hard edge and my texture is perfectly mirrored, so it flows back and forth, what I do is I will rotate just the pan. I'll just pan the material around. Okay, so hopefully that helps break down the material game that is all this texture stuff. I'm going to save all of this, and then I'm going to close this. Unless, Nerodi, you had any questions about this specifically before I show you my final material for Theron.
Nope, go for it.
Okay, cool. So let's close this, just because. Too many Unreals is bad. Okay, so let's take everything we just learned and let's break down exactly what we've got going on. All right, what's interesting about this slash, or what's going on with this slash, is it's really just the same thing we just did repeated 3 different times. What do I mean by that? I mean, if we turn off our mesh rotations on all of these, okay, so we have our slash, okay, and then the one that's going to be more difficult to see, or what's interesting to see, is if we look at this from the side, you'll notice it's pretty hard to see the slash. So what I've done is, in addition to the slash, I actually have an edge curve. And if we just take it and make it black, maybe that'll be easier to see. So let's go black and black. So you'll now notice that there's a black edge up front here. And you can see when I look at it from the side, when I look at the slash from the side, all I see is black. The reason is the disk is flat. Because the disk is flat, I wanted to give the slash the ability to be read from, if I slash like this, it's super easy to see the big broad side of the disk. But if I slash right at the camera, as I come right at the camera, the very front edge you won't see. So what I've got is I've got a thin edge border that runs around the side. And you can see that if we take a look at our shape lib, this guy literally lines up to the disk at the edge. That's all it is. It's just a smaller version of this swoosh. Okay, so this is a big one, and then I got a really thin one that I use for the edge definition if for some reason we see it from the side. Now, another way to potentially achieve that is, and I've seen, is the disk is not perfectly flat. The disk has kind of like a bow to it slightly, so it could be read from any angle, as an example. There's lots and lots of trickery that happens in VFX that's just awesome to see. Okay, so going back to this, if we turn a bunch of this stuff back on, so skin mesh size. Okay, so all that's happening is the smear, which is this one, if we isolate it, smear, timeline, smear, isolate. Yeah, so the smear, if we look at it, this one is using rotation of the mesh, because what was happening was, in this particular case, if we don't change the mesh rotation, you can kind of see it has this nice long tail to it. If we look at our dynamic material parameters, you can see how I can scale this curve. And it doesn't swipe the same. Hold on. Oh, it's changing its value. Do you see how you see that edge, that sharp edge? There's like a you can see the crisp edge to it. That's because if you don't have the timing just right, you're basically seeing that edge. So if we go back to what our values were before, let's try this. We're definitely not saving any of this. Okay, so now we're back, and that's why in this particular case I'm using the mesh orientation, because I'm spinning the whole disk. I don't have to worry about a non-uniform material going across the edge. Now let's take a look at the material. So the material for the VFX slash, it looks very similar to what we had. You'll see we have our smear, okay? You see we have our dynamic parameter. This is our pan and the values that are happening here, okay? Now, you even have our flip U's. Those are there. There's our flip U. I don't even think I put a V in here because I didn't need one, okay? And then what we've got is I take the flip U, I'm subtracting my cutoff. All right, I've got my hardness mult that allows me to change the value of the hardness just like we did. I feed that into the power. This gives me my edge erode. I saturate that, and then I'm multiplying it. Now, the one thing that I am doing differently here is I am also multiplying it by what we did initially where we took out just the borders, because what I want is when this is on a swoosh, for example, if we go to the swoosh, go to swoosh. What I want is I want this bottom edge to be softer. Okay? If this wasn't here, you would see a hard edge here. This basically is it's a really thin thing that goes around U's and V's around the entire texture to pull it out. And you can see it if can we start previewing here? Oh, that's gonna be really hard to preview because, okay, yeah, you can kind of see it here. So you can see we've got this border that's going all the way around. So this is a third way, by the way, to go 0 to 1. You can use a sine wave if we start previewing. If you use sine with a period of 2, basically the edges will be, it's another way to get an edge fade, okay? And then another final way to get an edge fade in here is I subtract off the Fresnel. So a Fresnel, if you look at it, if we look at a sphere with just a Fresnel on it, you'll notice that the edges are hot, right? So if we subtract that off, what that does is if the edge is bright, value of 1, and we subtract off a Fresnel, what that does is that brings down the edges. So if we look at the Fresnel for this swoosh edge, you'll notice that the edges and over on the sides is super bright. So the final end result, I'm subtracting off this value so that when we look at the final shape, if we stop previewing, it has a kind of like a softness to it. If we were to skip that, it's a harder. Looking at this edge, you see how harsh this edge is? If we bring this back in, see how soft that feels now? It's subtle, okay? This is nice and kind of soft and muted. If we take it out, actually probably what we can do is let's put a mult in here. So we can change this. All right, this is with full Fresnel. If we go 0, see how hard that edge is? You can actually see the facety, right, from the low resness of this shape. But if we subtract off our Fresnel, we get a nice softer kind of edge to it. We can make it even more by multiplying it by even more. And this will subtract off even more. It makes it more wispy, if you will. So all of this is all about controlling the edge, the fall-offs, giving me the dynamic material parameters so that when I'm in here and I'm creating my slash smears, I can erode the outer edge. Oh no! It doesn't like undo. And with that, we will call it a wrap. It doesn't like undo. Should not have clicked that button. But the fact that we made it through the entire stream without a blue screen is awesome. And without a lockup is also awesome. So we'll just call that a win. But the overall point is, as you build your material, you'll realize something. You'll be looking at your VFX and you'll say, oh, you know what? If I could just control the dark and the light spots. Like a great example, if you've ever watched any of the online VFX stuff, a lot of times they'll take and they'll erode out the middle, and they do that usually with the power function. You could add that too. So in addition to being able to control the edging and the fall off, you could also control the middle by putting another power in there and just basically eroding your overall texture. Oh, the music stopped. I was like, oh, did it just freeze? Awesome. Anyways, so that was a little bit of the rabbit hole that I ended up going down in order to create the swipes that I wanted and the smears I wanted. Bottom line is, it's a little bit of creative problem solving. Sometimes you're going to use a disc. Sometimes you're going to use, different types of shapes, materials that slide, shapes that rotate. It all just depends on the effect you're going for. In the case of the smear that I wanted, it is literally just a painted texture and the shape rotates, and then through a little bit of trickery, makes it look like it's swiping around. So before I call a wrap to this, Neroda, did you have any questions for to solidify in time for the video, or and I'll just hang out here a little bit after the end?
I do not. Nothing
Cool.
to solidify in time.
Sweet. All right, so everybody else, as always, whether or not you're checking out this video now or later if it gets posted to YouTube, thanks for helping support the channel. Thanks for being part of this adventure. I know this was a long one, but materials is a crazy beast. VFX is an amazing discipline, and they are literally wizards. It's awesome stuff. So, as always, I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day, night, weekend, whatever you happen to be going into. My name's Kevin. I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.